Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. I had just finished wiping down the kitchen counter when I heard the soft knock at the front door. At first, I thought maybe it was the wind or a delivery I'd forgotten I ordered. But then the knock came again. 3 gentle taps, spaced just enough to feel polite. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was just after 4, the hour when the afternoon light filters through my lace curtains and turns my living room golden. I opened the door, and there he stood, Ethan, my neighbor's son. He couldn't have been more than 23, maybe 24. He had that freshly scrubbed, clean-cut look that young men often lose too quickly these days. A mop of wavy brown hair fell over his forehead, and his deep-set green eyes sparkled like they always did when he smiled. And he was smiling now, holding a small wicker basket wrapped in a soft linen cloth. "Hi, Miss Carla," he said, his voice warm and steady. "Mom asked me to bring this over. Said she made too many muffins." I chuckled and stepped aside. "Come in, Ethan. You know you don't have to knock like a stranger." He hesitated, just for a second, then walked in, the basket still in his hands. I closed the door behind him and followed him into the kitchen. He set the basket down on the table and peeled back the cloth. The scent of blueberry and something citrusy rose up, comforting and familiar. "She said these are your favorite," he added. "Well, she remembered right," I said, smiling. "Tell her thank you for me. And thank you for delivering." He nodded, then lingered, his eyes scanning the room like he hadn't seen it 100 times before. "It always feels so warm in here," he said, almost to himself. I leaned against the counter, drying my hands on a dish towel. "It's just the afternoon light. Makes everything look better than it is." He met my eyes then, and something in his expression shifted. There was a gentleness, a quiet curiosity that hadn't been there when he was younger. I'd watched him grow up through my front window, from a shy boy trailing behind his father's legs to a teenager kicking a soccer ball in their yard. And now, this. "Mind if I sit for a minute?" he asked. I shook my head. "Of course not. You want something to drink." "Water's fine," he said, sliding into the same chair he'd sat in 100 times as a kid. But now his shoulders filled out the space differently. He seemed more solid, more present. I poured him a glass and set it in front of him. For a moment, there was just the sound of the ticking clock and the birds outside. "You okay, Ethan?" I asked softly. He looked up. "Yeah, just been thinking a lot lately. About stuff. About people." I waited, sensing he needed space to find the words. "You've always been around," he said finally. "Even when things were hard at home. When Dad left, when Mom cried all night, I'd look out the window and see your light on. I used to wonder what you were doing at night. I felt my breath catch. I'd never imagined I was visible in that way. I guess I was just living," I said gently. He nodded. "That helped more than you know." Silence settled between us again, but it was the good kind. Not empty, just full of things that didn't need to be said right away. I sat across from him, sipping my tea, studying the lines of his face. There was a maturity in him now, something rooted. He didn't fidget the way he used to. He looked at me with a calm that felt comforting. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled again. "You always reminded me of someone in one of those old movies. Graceful. Strong. The kind of woman who knows exactly who she is." I laughed, a little embarrassed. "Flattery won't get you more muffins, young man." But something about the way he looked at me, unhurried, open, sincere, made my cheeks warm. "I mean it," he said. You've always been important to me, even if I didn't know how to say it. I wasn't sure how to respond. I felt something shifting inside me, something subtle and deep. It wasn't about romance, not exactly. It was more human than that. An acknowledgement, a connection forming not out of flirtation, but out of shared presence. He stood up then, gently pushing his chair back. I should get going. But I was wondering if maybe I could stop by again sometime, just to talk. I smiled, my heart settling into a soft rhythm. I'd like that, Ethan. I really would. He picked up the empty basket and turned toward the door, pausing before he opened it. Thanks for letting me sit. For the water. For everything. I watched him walk down the path back to his house, the sun casting long shadows behind him. And for the first time in a while, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, seen, needed, and quietly grateful that someone had knocked on my door. The next few days passed in a gentle rhythm. I kept expecting the knock again, that soft, tentative rapping on the door that had somehow reached deeper into my soul than I could explain. I even set out an extra mug of tea one afternoon, just in case. But he didn't come. Then, 3 days later, as I was trimming the lavender by the front step, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and there he was, this time with no basket, just a sheepish smile and hands in his jacket pockets. "Hey," he said. "Didn't mean to sneak up." "You didn't," I said, brushing off my knees. "I was hoping I'd see you." We walked inside together, and this time he sat more easily, like he belonged there. "I had a rough day," he said. "Classes are a lot right now, and I don't know. I just wanted to be somewhere that felt calm." I poured the tea again. This time, he helped me carry it to the table. We sat without speaking for a while, just sipping and listening to the wind outside. "Do you ever feel like everyone expects you to be strong, even when you're not?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "More than you'd think." He looked at me with those soft, searching eyes again. "How do you do it?" I leaned back in my chair. I stopped trying to be strong all the time. Some days I cry. Some days I get angry. But I keep going because that's what life asks of us. He seemed to let that settle, and then he leaned forward slightly. "Would it be okay if I asked you something kind of personal?" I nodded. "Do you ever get lonely?" His question sat in the air like a candle's flicker, small but bright. "Yes," I said. "I do." He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he reached across the table and gently touched my hand, not in a romantic way, not inappropriate or bold. Just human. Warm. "I don't want you to feel that way," he said quietly. And just like that, something shifted. Not in a dramatic or life-changing way, but in the smallest spaces of the heart. Like a window had cracked open in a stuffy room, letting in fresh air. The next few visits became a quiet ritual. Sometimes he brought cookies. Sometimes we just watched the rain in silence. We talked about his college courses, his mother, the world, and how hard it was to find meaning in it all. I told him about my late husband, about the life I once had, and the dreams I had tucked away with age. He listened in a way few people ever had. And slowly, gently, without either of us meaning to, the space between us became more than just time and tea. It became comfort, and something close to healing. It had been nearly a week since Ethan last visited, and though I didn't want to admit it out loud, not even to myself, I found myself listening more closely for footsteps on the porch, or watching for that familiar figure walking up the path. It wasn't just about company. It was something quieter, something tender, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long while. I was standing in the kitchen, drying a clean plate, when the doorbell rang. A flutter rose in my chest, like I was 17 again, and hoping someone had remembered my name. I composed myself quickly, not wanting to look too eager. But when I opened the door and saw Ethan, holding a paper bag and a smile that reached his eyes, I felt something ease in me. "I brought sandwiches," he said. "Figured you might be hungry." I laughed and stepped aside. "You trying to fatten me up or butter me up?" "Both," he said with a grin, walking past me like he'd been doing it all his life. We set the food down in the kitchen and pulled up chairs to the small table by the window. The afternoon light painted a soft halo around him, and I found myself studying him again. The way his forearms flexed when he unwrapped the sandwiches, the gentle curve of his mouth when he was focused, the care he took with even the simplest tasks. "You always make it look so easy," I said, half to myself. He glanced up. "What's that?" "Being kind," I said, shrugging. "Most people rush through life, never noticing the small things. You pay attention." He looked down for a moment, a faint flush rising to his cheeks. "I guess I learned that from you." That stopped me. I wasn't used to being seen like that. Not for a long time. "You might be the only one who thinks so," I said. "Well, then they're not paying attention." We ate quietly for a while, the air between us light but full. He told me about his classes, his frustrations with a professor who seemed more interested in hearing himself speak than teaching anything useful. I shared a story about my late husband, how he once got lost on the way to a hardware store 10 minutes from our house and ended up 2 towns over. Ethan laughed, and for a moment I saw that boy again. The one who used to run barefoot across the lawn, chasing fireflies on summer nights. After the last bite of sandwich was gone, we sat with warm mugs in hand. The conversation drifted to quieter places. I told him about the year after my husband passed, how the silence of the house nearly swallowed me, how the nights felt longer, even though the clock never changed. "I never knew," Ethan said softly. "I just thought you liked being alone." "Most people did," I replied. "But there's a difference between choosing solitude and living in it because no one knocks." He looked away then, out the window. I wish I'd knocked sooner. I reached across the table and placed my hand on his. "You're here now. That's what matters." His fingers curled gently around mine, and for a moment we just sat there, palms pressed together like an unspoken promise had passed between us. No rush, no pretense, just something real. That evening, we didn't talk much more. He stayed until the sun dipped low, and the kitchen turned dusky with shadows. When he finally stood to go, he paused in the doorway, his hand on the frame. "I feel better when I'm here," he said. "Lighter." I smiled. That's how it should be. As the days passed, our visits became more regular. He'd stop by after class, sometimes late in the afternoon, sometimes early evening. Sometimes he brought food, other times just a book or a story or a mood that needed company. One rainy Thursday, he showed up drenched, water dripping from his curls, shirt clinging to his chest. I handed him a towel and told him to sit near the heater. He peeled off his jacket, laughing and shivering. "You really need to check the weather before you walk," I scolded gently, handing him a dry t-shirt from the laundry pile. It was my husband's, one of the last few I'd kept. It swallowed Ethan's frame in a way that made me ache and smile at the same time. "Thanks," he said, pulling it over his head. "Smells like cedar and something else." "Memories," I said, turning away before the tears could rise. He didn't press. He just sat, hands wrapped around his tea, eyes watching the rain race down the window. "Sometimes I think about what it'll be like when I'm older," he said. "What I'll regret. What I'll wish I'd done." I turned toward him. "You're too young to be thinking about regrets." "Maybe," he said. "But I think about them anyway, especially lately." "Why lately?" I asked. He paused. "Because I started realizing that the things I want most aren't the ones people tell me I should want." I didn't answer. I just waited. He turned to face me. "I like being here, with you. I don't know what that means, and I'm not trying to say something I shouldn't. I just feel more like myself here than anywhere else." I nodded slowly. That means something. We sat in that understanding for a long while, the rain steady on the roof. It wasn't romantic, not yet, not in the way movies tell us it should be. But it was honest. And in its honesty, it was more intimate than anything I'd known in years. Eventually, he stood. I should go. "But would you mind if I came back tomorrow?" "I'd miss you if you didn't." He smiled then. One of those quiet, grateful smiles that reaches deeper than words, and slipped out into the night. And for the first time in a long time, I stood at the door after someone left and didn't feel alone. I felt hopeful. The following morning, I found myself fussing over things I hadn't thought about in years. I fluffed the pillows on the sofa, wiped down the windows, and even changed into a soft blue blouse I hadn't worn since before my husband passed. The mirror caught my reflection as I adjusted the collar, and I paused. There was something unfamiliar, yet comforting, in the way my eyes held a sparkle. Not vanity, not even romance, just life. A soft flicker returning where I hadn't noticed it had gone dim. By 4:30, I was pacing the hallway like a girl waiting for her date to pick her up for a high school dance. It was ridiculous, I told myself, but even knowing that didn't make the anticipation any less real. When the knock finally came, I didn't answer it right away. I waited a beat, smoothed my hair, and then opened the door. "Hey," Ethan said, carrying a worn book and a grocery bag. "I thought maybe we could try cooking something today." I arched a brow. "Are you suggesting I need help in the kitchen?" He grinned. "No, ma'am. I'm saying I need help in the kitchen. I can barely boil water." I stepped aside, laughing. "Well, come in then. Let's make a chef out of you." He set the bag on the counter and pulled out ingredients: mushrooms, garlic, pasta, a little block of parmesan. I Googled comfort food for rainy days, and this came up. Fettuccine with garlic cream sauce. I read off the recipe he printed. Ambitious. I was hoping the company would carry me through. We got to work. I handed him the chopping board while I stirred the butter in the pan. We moved around each other in that small kitchen like we'd been cooking together for years, bumping elbows, laughing at clumsy spills, and brushing close in a way that felt easy and warm. At one point, he accidentally dropped a mushroom slice down the front of my blouse. I gasped in mock outrage, and he blushed, quickly turning away. "I'm so sorry," he mumbled, flustered. "I didn't mean." "Ethan," I said gently, touching his arm. "It's okay. Accidents happen." He looked at me then, his face open and vulnerable, and for a moment the air changed. Something shifted beneath the surface, like a current passing between us. Dinner was simple and imperfect, but it tasted better than any restaurant dish I'd had in years. We ate by candlelight, mostly for fun, but as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the kitchen walls, it started to feel like more than just a joke. "This is nice," he said, pushing his plate back. "Better than the campus cafeteria." "Well, we do offer ambience," I teased. We lingered at the table long after the food was gone, our conversation drifting into deeper waters. He asked about my younger years, what I dreamed about before life turned into routines and responsibilities. I told him about wanting to open a little bookshop once, maybe by the coast, with a window that faced the water. "What stopped you?" he asked. I smiled wistfully. Life, marriage, then caregiving. It just slipped away. He looked at me, really looked. I wish I had known you then. My heart fluttered. I wasn't that different. I think you were, he said quietly. And I think some of her is still here. I reached for my cup to hide the way my hands trembled slightly. You're very kind. I'm just honest. The silence between us filled with meaning neither of us could quite name. It wasn't about age. It wasn't about flirtation. It was about understanding, about recognition, about something rare. As the night wore on, the rain began again, tapping gently on the windows. He helped me wash the dishes, sleeves rolled up, humming something low and tuneless under his breath. When we were done, we stood in the narrow kitchen, hands still wet from the rinse, eyes meeting in that flickering candlelight. I should probably go, he said softly. Yes, I agreed, though I didn't want him to. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob, and turned back. Carla. Yes. He hesitated. I think about you, not just when I'm here. My breath caught. I don't know what that means, he added quickly, but I wanted to say it. I stepped forward. My voice came out steadier than I expected. It means something. That's enough for now. He smiled, more with his eyes than his lips, and then left. I stood at the door long after he was gone, watching the empty porch and the flicker of streetlights on wet pavement. Something was happening, slow, quiet, respectful, and I was letting it. That night, I didn't feel lonely. I felt seen, chosen, and gently, I was choosing back. I woke up that morning to the sound of birdsong and the faint scent of spring coming through the open bedroom window. It was a soft, warm breeze, the kind that carried the promise of something new. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, just listening. My robe draped around my shoulders, my feet bare against the hardwood floor, I felt grounded in a way I hadn't in years. Ethan hadn't come by in a few days, and though I missed him, I didn't feel worried or restless. Instead, I felt something quieter, an anticipation, perhaps. The kind that wasn't about filling a void, but waiting for a presence you'd grown to cherish. Just after noon, as I clipped dead leaves from the potted fern by the front porch, I saw him walking up the path, not with his usual casual energy, but with something more deliberate. He wore a light jacket, and under his arm, he carried a small notebook. Hey, he said, stopping at the bottom step. You have a minute? Of course, I said, stepping aside. You know you never have to ask. We sat out on the porch, side by side in the wicker chairs. The air smelled of honeysuckle and earth. He opened the notebook and held it out to me. I've been writing, he said. It's just thoughts, nothing special, but I wanted you to read this part. I took it carefully, feeling the warmth of his hand still lingering on the cover. The pages were messy, scribbled with half-crossed-out lines and small, patient revisions. I began reading aloud. She is not a placeholder for loneliness. She is a reminder that kindness lives in the quietest corners. She is not my future, nor my past. She is my peace in the in-between. I paused, overcome. You wrote this? He nodded. It's about you. You've been more than I expected. I didn't know how much I needed someone to see me, really see me. And you did. But more than that, you let me see you." I set the notebook on my lap and looked at him. His hands were folded in his lap, his gaze fixed on the porch rail, like it held all the answers he was afraid to ask for. "I don't know where this is going," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "I don't even know if it should go anywhere. But I needed you to know that you've changed something in me. You helped me feel human again." Tears stung my eyes, not from sadness, but from that soft ache that comes when you realize you're not invisible anymore, that you matter. That somewhere in the weaving of time and loss and healing, you've become meaningful to someone. I reached over and took his hand. "You changed something in me too, Ethan." He exhaled slowly, his shoulders easing, the tension slipping away like a held breath finally released. "I don't want to lose this," he whispered. "You won't," I said. "Whatever this is, it's real, and it doesn't have to fit in a box or come with a name. It just is." He squeezed my hand, and we sat there like that, the afternoon sun casting long lines of light across the floorboards. Later we moved inside, and I made a simple lunch, chicken salad, and iced tea. He sat at the table, watching me as I sliced cucumbers, his gaze steady, thoughtful. "You know," he said, "when I first started coming over, I thought I was helping you feel less alone." I smiled. "And now?" "Now I realize you were helping me too, maybe more than I knew." We talked about little things after that. Movies we liked, places we wanted to travel. He said he'd never seen the ocean. I promised to show him someday. It was a promise made lightly, but with meaning. The hours drifted by, and when the light began to turn golden again, he stood to leave. "Will you be here tomorrow?" he asked. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. He leaned in then, slowly, giving me every moment to pull away. But I didn't. His lips brushed my cheek, soft and lingering. Not a romantic kiss, not quite, but not something casual either. It was an acknowledgement, a thank you, a question and an answer, all wrapped in one. When he walked down the path this time, I didn't watch with sadness. I watched with calm, with a heart that felt full. That evening, I opened the windows wide and let the spring air fill the house. I turned on an old record, one I hadn't played since my husband passed, and I danced, slow, easy steps across the living room floor, my robe fluttering at my ankles. I wasn't trying to chase youth or rewrite the past. I was simply alive, fully and sweetly alive, in a way I hadn't been for a very long time. Sometimes love doesn't come with fireworks or grand declarations. Sometimes it's a basket of muffins, a quiet conversation, a hand on yours in the soft glow of the afternoon. And sometimes it's a boy from next door, grown now, bringing over something simple and leaving behind something unforgettable.